Good morning, and we are in the Proclamation on the Family. And today we're going to get into the mortal life. We were in the premortal life. We talked about some of the things that Adam and Eve gave us, the commandment to multiply and replenish the earth um, as part of that, and that it's still a commandment today. And the words we have further, we declare that God has commanded that the sacred powers of procreation between are to be employed between a man and woman lawfully wedded as husband and wife. We'll talk more about that um, the next couple of days. So today and tomorrow, we're going to talk specifically about what we do in this life. We start off again. We declare the means by which mortal life is created to be divinely appointed. We affirm the sanctity of life and of its importance in God's eternal plan. So, everything that ties with the creation of life is divinely um, appointed. Therefore, we should be looking to God to find out how we should um, treat these things, and that's what the Proclamation on the Family does. Husband and wife have a solemn responsibility to love and care for each other and for their children. So that's the first part right there, a solemn responsibility. It doesn't say, some sort of responsibility. It says a solemn responsibility to love and care. This is something that we should be striving for all the time. You don't just all of a sudden fall into something. If you have a responsibility, a solemn responsibility, it usually means you're working at it. And this is something to work at. And I just want to stop there for a second and go into um, the talk by Elder L. Whitney Clayton. What a name, Whitney and Clayton. You kind of find out where his ancestry is from, probably from that in the Doctrine and Covenants. I haven't looked it up, but it sure seems um, quite a coincidence to have those two names. Of the presidency of the 70. So this is in the Come Follow Me, but I put things in here so it's easier to reach. Um, and I whittled it down to his four principles. First, from the Lord's perspective, establishing the finest homes has everything to do with the personal qualities of the people who live there. So you should be working on those qualities, just like we said, especially love and care for each other. Second, residents of the finest homes make time to study the scriptures and the words of the living prophets every day. I believe that's a true thing that you should do. I grew up in a home that was like that. We got up, I remember my mom talking about that she would have to be to work by 7 o'clock, so we had to get up at 6 o'clock every morning um, to study the scriptures. And anybody that's had early morning seminary knows what that feels like. Third, the finest homes follow the blueprint created by the Lord for his finest homes, the temple. And we've talked time and time again about the importance of going to the temple um, this year, as and that is the blueprint for our homes. And if you look under temple in the Bible dictionary, it says only the home can compare to the temple in sacredness. And I believe that very strongly, and our homes should be that type of home. Fourth, the finest homes are refuges for the storms of life. Most of my children are grown up now. Well, all of them are really. My youngest is 17, almost 18, and they all live their own lives. But one thing that is really great is that they can come home, and they know they can come home and have that refuge from the storms of life sometimes that they need. And then this little note that I think this we'll hear later on a little bit, um, not today, but um, about homes don't need to be perfect, and they aren't perfect. This doesn't mean righteous won't become ill, suffer accidents, face business reversals, or confront many other difficulties in life. Those who strive to obey the commandments are blessed to find their way forward with peace and hope. And I believe that, even when it's hard. I mean, um, it's I've had enough reversal in my life to know that it is true. You don't have to have a perfect life that you think is perfect for it to be a fine home in the Lord. So let's read this verse again a little bit. Husband and wife have a solemn responsibility to love and care for each other and for their children. Um, Again, how we do that to become closer to our children. And I think that's one of the things I learned with adult children. They make their own choices, but your job is to love and care for them. Children are an heritage of the Lord. That's Psalms 127:3. Parents have a sacred duty to rear their children in love and righteousness. So you can't just love them to death, but you do have to share the teachings and the righteousness, teach them how to be righteous. But when they start making those choices, you need to show that love and you need to show your righteousness to provide for their physical and spiritual needs. Uh, I- um, Sometimes I think the physical is easier than the spiritual, but that is something you need to strive almost daily. And I think that's where that item that the finest homes have the scriptures and the words of the living prophets in their homes daily comes in. And to teach them to love and serve one another. I think that's another one where they learn that love. Again, the word love comes up. Uh, One of the most important things we can do, because if you love someone, you're going to serve them. But we also need to teach to observe the commandments of God and to be law abiding citizens wherever they live. This is all stuff we've been learning this year in Doctrine and Covenants anyway, especially those ones. Husbands and wives, mothers and fathers will be held accountable before God for the discharge of these obligations. And notice the words, how strong that is. Will be held accountable for the discharge of these obligations. If we fail in these things, then we're the ones that are accountable. Remember, um, we learned that man um, must be we believe that man is accountable for their own sins and not Adam's transgression. I probably totally got that wrong, but I'm just thinking of it off the top. That's true, but there are discharges of parents that we have to take as sacred responsibility. And if we don't do that, our children won't know where to turn. They won't have that firm foundation. But as I started from the top, and things aren't always going to be perfect. And if you find that your life and your family doesn't seem perfect, so what? One thing you can have is love and service, and work on each of the things as you can. Observe the commandments of God. If you're listening to this, you're probably at that point anyway. But become abiding citizens. These things aren't rocket science, and you might not be perfect at everything. But let's start with these basics, especially. As I said, you will win if you do the basics. I hope that as you go throughout the day, you can think of your sacred duties, and hopefully, um, whether your parents followed anything like this or they didn't, it doesn't matter. You love them anyway. And if you're a parent, you love your children anyway. And I hope you go throughout the day with a lot of love in your heart. And we'll see you tomorrow.